So, without further ado, I'd like to welcome our speaker, Margaret Graziano. Maji, the session is all yours.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Hopefully, this PowerPoint is going to be working today. My name is Maji. My formal name is Margaret. I began my career in 1983 as a single mom in the recruiting industry, and I have evolved to leading major organizational interventions for companies that have devolved into a place of friction, um, deadened engagement, and sadness, actually. There's an absence of love present. There's just too much stress, people getting sick, etc. So I'm an interventionist. And in the interventions that I perform um, and succeed at, we have a core and fundamental distinction called ResponseAgility. It's taking responsibility for everything that's not working in that person's center of influence. And that's when everybody takes responsibility for what's not working. In a human system, it's never one person's fault. Everyone's to blame, or I'm sorry, my bad. Everyone's at fault and no one's to blame, because we are all bringing in our programming into work every single day. What ResponseAgility is about is the ability to shift in 90 seconds or less from being part of the problem in your own individual life, in your family life, and in your work life to being part of the solution. And that's ResponseAgility. And I'm super excited to share it with you. How we tune in to ResponseAgility, turn on our highest level of genius, and tap in to our innate intelligence is by moving from friction to flow. So let's get started. This is me at 6 years old. I was raised in the perfect household from 0 to 6. I played outside. I got my fingernails dirty. If you zoom in, you could see dirty fingernails. I was an outdoor little tom girl. I had an idyllic father. He was a plumber. He owned a plumbing company. We had a swimming pool in our backyard. Life was fun, sunshine and roses. And my mother was like this idyllic 60s mom with the big hair and the big earrings, and she dressed so cool and she did exercises. And I wanted to grow up and be just like her. I wanted to be a secretary because she was my father's secretary, and I wanted to be a wife. And she was my father's wife. And I don't know about mother. I don't know if mother was on the top of the list, but it was secretary and wife. And then around the time I was 7 years old, my father had a relapse in his drug addiction, and he lost sight of everything that was important to him. The only important thing to him was drugs. He was violent. He hurt my mom and he hurt my siblings. He never hurt me. But I grew up shielding myself from the point of 7 years old on from what was going on outside me so I could protect that sense of dis-ease, stress, anxiety. And as the walls got thicker and bigger, the inability to feel and see what was going on outside my own world got further and further away from me. The ability to do that got further and further away from me. And I didn't know, and I didn't know it. I grew up to be a tough as nails chick. I had that, look at that, playing outside, bruises. I could handle my own. Now I've got some disconnection inside. All of that became my persona, My personal reality created my personality, and it fed each other. And the more successful I became as a recruiter, the more tough I became. The more my strengths also became my weaknesses. Now, it's not just for me, folks. It's for every one of you on this call and every person you will ever train for the rest of your life. It's why training doesn't work. We're giving information on top of years and years and years and years and years of wounding and baggage and behavior strengths. Like, I'm accurate. That's my strength. When under stress, I become perfectionistic, controlling, dogmatic. You know what I'm talking about. I'm competitive. I win. I'm super great at sales. But under stress and pressure, when I'm having a problem at home or at work, or when the tension gets too strong, I become part of the tension and I revert back to that little kid self who was coping. This is called subconscious programming. It happens. Our tracks get laid as children. And what ResponseAgility is about stopping and connecting to your adult self, your highest self, understanding what's going on inside yourself and what's going on in the environment that might be triggering your lowest, most immature self from showing up. And not just for you, of course, because you're the learning and development people, but for all those souls you serve every day. When we can understand what's going on inside, Daniel Goleman, emotional intelligence, when we understand what's going on inside, we can look to the environment and level set and see what's really happening without our projection. So we stop, we connect, we understand, we listen to ourselves, our inner self, our highest self, and we listen to the environment. What do we need to know? Then we process. Our discernment is on high alert now. We're discerning because we've calmed down, and our right and our left hemisphere are connected. Our prefrontal cortex, the seat of our executive brain, is fully on. When we are our lowest self, when we are triggered, when we are 8 years old, when we are defending what's going on in our environment and our personality got created, it was always due to a rift in our happiness. If you study Erickson's 8 stages of development, and if you're in learning and development, you might want to check it out, but there's 3 points in a human being's life where their strengths really get hammered home and their neural pathways get laid. And it's the first time they have a break in being, like I did when my dad beat the living crap out of my mother and she begged for him not to kill her. And I was in my bedroom rocking myself, soothing myself, telling myself I'm sure things like this will never happen to me, or life is not safe, or whatever. And then what showed up is this little girl who needed to be the center of attention and get approval and get loved so I would feel I was okay. I grew up into owning my own firm, held no one accountable because that little girl on the inside just wanted to be liked. So I was confusing to work for. I had rules, but I didn't enforce them. I had KPIs, key performance indicators, but if people didn't hit them, they still had the job. So I created an environment of no accountability. I know you know people like that. So break in being between the ages of 3 and 7 years old. Everything is great, idyllic childhood, and bam, it doesn't have to be drug addiction, doesn't have to be abuse, doesn't have to be a divorce, doesn't have to be you almost got hit by a car or got kidnapped or had a child abuser. It doesn't have to be that. It could be like you were running across the street and your mom grabbed you by the hair so that you didn't get hit by a car and you were shocked. Or it could have been the next baby was born. Next time in our life is between the ages of 9 and 13. All people have a break in belonging. So the amygdala goes off. The child is in trouble. The child, the way the body is responding is like there's a saber-toothed tiger. And the adrenaline and the cortisol, and you hear how fast I'm talking. And that's what happens to the inside. The nervous system goes haywire. And the ego says, I'll save the day. Try on being independent. You don't need anybody. That was what happened with me. So I became likable and now independent. Running a business, everyone has to like me and I don't need anybody. Not a great recipe for being successful. And the third time is the first time we leave home, when we have a break in security, when we have the oh shit, I'm on my own moment. No one's coming. And then our little ego does its trick: amygdala, cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine. Boom, ow, I'll find something to make me feel better. I'll be successful and I won't ever have to worry about somebody supporting me. So then these people get older, they get into executive roles, they get into management roles, and they're really successful until something happens in the external environment, shit hits the fan, COVID happens, new CEO comes in, old CEO comes in, Trump is in administration, the refugee and immigration policy stopped, and your job success required on that. You might get laid off because everyone has to go back to work. You have your third child and they're born prematurely. Whatever happens, and we get triggered and we revert back to those coping mechanisms, back beyond where the coping mechanisms can support us. And then we send people to training and we want them to get better. So the number one skill I am recommending for anybody living through this century, in this presidency, in this global condition, with this external volatility, uncertainty, chaos, complexity, confusion, ambiguity, is response agility. 99% of workers acknowledge that stress affects their well-being. Stress affects their ability to think well, feel well, communicate well, live well. It affects well-being in every area. Parent well. 31% of people taking Gallup's survey said they believe interpersonal issues, little self, fighting with little self, little 5-year-old self, 8-year-old self, 18-year-old self, fighting with 9-year-old, 16-year-old, and 21. It's not our highest self, it's our lowest self. It's friction, and we're going to learn today about friction, and we're going to learn how to move it to flow. What is friction? Friction is interpersonal conflicts. It's workplace stress. It's when somebody sends you an email and makes sure to CC everyone else so they know that they've asked you to do it. That's friction. It's friction for everybody who's CC'd, too many emails, too much extra work, and definite friction for the person who the email was sent to. And probably the person who sent the email was in a state of friction when they sent it. So 31%, what's other friction? You work for a micromanager. You are a micromanager because you've had enough people let you down in your lifetime, and you've seen people get fired when they make mistakes, so you're never going to make a mistake. You're dependent. You need someone to tell you what to do because you need approval, so you don't take risks. All of these different personas working together at work cause conflict. Let's say I'm a free bird. I want to be a competitor, a high achiever, and I'm working for a micromanager. Friction. So workplace combat. This is what's going on. You have aggressive defensive behavior and passive defensive behavior going on at least 30% of the time at work. And this is with interpersonal behaviors. What does that look like? Aggressive defensive. We're powering up. I don't care what you tell me to do. Move out of my way. I'm getting it done. Or we say things like, I'm the CEO. I'm the president because I said so. We do this really easy with our kids. Competition. Instead of competing with the outside world, we now turn our competition gloves on internally, and we got sales against operations, finance against credit. Who knows? All these different departments, service against sales, service against operations, competing, and that causes friction. This is when you have siloing, when you have people keeping secrets and not sharing information. When you have a highly competitive environment, no innovation. How about oppositional? Whatever you want them to do, whatever you invite them to do, whatever leadership invites them to do, or employees invite leadership to do, somebody's always saying why it won't work. Here's why it won't work. We tried this before. And then perfectionism, it's got to be my way or the highway. You have this aggressive red zone behavior. And then what, through the law of physics, something's got to happen with that. You get passive defensive, where people are conforming. They're only doing exactly what they're told because they want to stay out of the firing line. They don't want to get called out or embarrassed. So they just bare minimum. And then when that happens, we lack creativity. They seek approval. Everything they're doing, they want other people to like them. And so there's no self-expression because they're acting all day, avoiding, not saying what's so. I'm working with a client right now. Now, I have 3 kinds of culture. I think you know I wrote the book Ignite Culture. It's fabulous. The first section is about uh, who you are as a leader, each of you on this call and anybody who leads, and how to stay in the state of flow more often than not. The second section is how to move your executive team from friction to flow. And then the third section is how to take the rest of the whole company. We're currently doing an intervention right now. We've interviewed 25 people who are considered leaders. They know there's so much crap going on, nobody says anything. They waited for an employee to go around them all directly to the board to report it. That's called avoiding. Complacency, knowing things are wrong and doing nothing about it, knowing people aren't producing and not doing anything about it, knowing there's poor behavior. So let's go back to, why do you need response agility? Because if you just do a quick inventory, I'm sure you can put 3 to 5 faces for every one of these definitions. And then if you have a bunch of people who are aggressive defensive and passive defensive, that causes friction, friction. Now, it doesn't just cause that 31% of workplace friction. It causes things like low performance, low engagement. It causes people leaving the organization. It causes a breakdown in innovation, because this is not just in interpersonal relationships, it's also in the environment, which is interpersonal relationships, but it's beyond those conflicts. So let's say me and Jim are having a conflict here. The environment is how our conflict impacts everybody. And you know it does, because energy is contagious. So now, if we've got this workplace conflict, the processes that we develop are going to be to work around all this mishigash, it's a workaround. Almost always when you see a ton of bureaucracy, a ton of processes, a ton of policies, it's all to work around poor behavior. All of that stuff stifles workplace effectiveness by 70%. Could you imagine if people knew how to fix this? And how to fix this craziness is response agility. Now, the truth is we go in and out of friction all day, and we go in and out of flow all day. But wouldn't it be powerful to spend more of your waking hours in a state of flow? Here's what flow is. It's a sense of joy, peace, belonging, contribution, self-actualization. That's flow. What happens in our body when we feel those things, when we experience ourselves experiencing those things, the energy in our body expands and we're filled with oxytocin, the love hormone. That same hormone thing when you see a puppy or a little baby. You're filled with dopamine. You know, those dopamine hits when you like eat a chocolate candy bar or get likes on Facebook, but you're filled naturally with that. Serotonin after a banana split or a little chocolate fudge, serotonin, sugar high. All of those naturally happen when you're in flow. And endorphins are flowing. Not only do you feel good and do you feel expansive in your body, you tap into your highest level of intelligence, your highest and best self, because it's not available in a state of friction. Let's talk about what friction is. Friction is, I'm feeling aggravated, agitated, annoyed, nervous, anxious, worried. And there's like this crinkling, this obstruction, this interference in my feeling at ease. So I feel a lot of dis-ease, which leads to disease, stress. So we know we're going to have moments of both, but we want to spend as little time as possible below the power and freedom line. And that's in a state of frustration, fear, or hopelessness. And there's lots of other adjectives you can use. You want to spend the majority of your time in courage, in believing that the future is a bright place to be, that your family's going to be okay, that your career is going to be okay, that your company's going to be okay, that your community is going to be okay, that your world's going to be okay. If you can just be encouraged in a belief, you're effective 65% of the time. If you can be in engagement where you're present here in the here and now, Ram Das, being here now, you can be happy 79% of the time. And when you're happy 79% of the time, you're creative and you're contagious. You're in a vibrational scale on the, I'm giving you all these names because you're learning and development people and you probably like books. That's a stereotype I just made up. That's a confirmation bias. But the book is by Dave Hawkins and it's called Consciousness Mapped. And he maps the internal vibration of the body and the energy and performance. This is when people, elite athletes, you see it with Steph Curry, you see it with Simone Biles, they're in a state of flow. There's a way to get there and you can stay there more. So let's talk about how do you move from friction to flow? First of all, you have to know what it looks like for you to be above the power and freedom line. You have to know what it looks like, feels like to be below the power and freedom line. We're going to do that today. We're actually going to take you through a process that you tap into yourself in flow and you tap in to yourself in friction, because self-awareness is the number one criteria for transformation. But the name of the game is to live and work above the power and freedom line, to live and work as a response agile human being. So what is response agility? Response agility is the ability to adapt quickly to changing circumstances outside in your outside environment and inside, and to be effective with situational change, conversational challenge, interactions that might not always go the way you want, and making decisions. It's tuning in to what's important to you, turning on your environmental signals and tapping into your innate intelligence so that you can access your cognitive intelligence. This comes first. The innate, the wisdom comes first, and then the learning comes second. And the cognitive intelligence is, what does it mean to show empathy in the workplace? What does it mean to see what actually needs to get done without any bias or judgment about who can and can't do it, or about what all the drama is in the way to getting it done? Just what needs to get done from a place of neutrality. And then to be able to turn on your ability to see the big picture, the forest. That's response agility, because you need full access to your executive brain. This is the seat of your executive brain. This is your prefrontal cortex. The left is your left hemisphere of your brain, the part that does sequencings and root cause analysis and measuring performance. That's all left hemisphere, linear kind of thinking. There's a positive and a negative. There's a list. Your brain can sort lists. That's left hemisphere. Right hemisphere is innovation, creativity, connectivity, oneness, non-duality. All of that is right hemisphere. But when your amygdala is on high alert, when you're hypervigilantly being those strengths, even when your gut tells you they don't work, but you're pushing, then what happens is you have no access to your executive brain because your body is shooting out norepinephrine, cortisol in high doses to the point where if you stop and taste your own saliva, you'll taste that tinniness. Too much happening in the workplace today. Cortisol, adrenaline, and norepinephrine, all of those are below the line. And when we are hammering hard against others, not with others, when we are struggling, we have to learn how to shift it. And you shift it through the SCULPT process, which we'll talk about. So, how it shows up in your performance is quicker thinking, better problem solving by 200, 400%, better problem solving, much more flexible and adaptable, agile. That's why we use that word, resourceful. You'll be able to tap into all your learnings, everything you've ever learned, like arrows in a quiver. And, oh, I need this. Oh, I need this. Oh, I need that, because you're clear. Now, think about the last time you lost your keys or lost your wallet or lost something important, and you're scrambling around, running around. You got to get out of the house. You're looking at the watch and you're panicked and you can't think about where it is. But as soon as you slow your roll, as soon as you take a breath, as soon as you bring up your parasympathetic nervous system, now all of the dust settles and you slow down and you suddenly start thinking about your last steps, where you were, what stopped, what little stop in the laundry room that your cognitive brain didn't remember, but your innate intelligence remembers because you slowed down and you cleared the dust. Now, I want to explain to you, in a state of friction, the average human being has 60,000 thoughts a day. 95% of those thoughts are repetitive. And here's the kicker: 85% of those 95 are negative. The automatic programming of a human being and the power of the ego is to pull you below the power and freedom line. So you want to master this. You want to be emotionally attuned to what's going on with you and others. You want to see in your kids' eyes that you just said something that wasn't okay with them, that you just helped them create one of their defining moments. That's response agility. By the way, you're never going to prevent your kids from having a defining moment. It's how they become an adult, a human being, and can survive in the world. Sometimes a little adrenaline and cortisol is good for you because it kicks you in the butt. We're talking about overuse. And in the world we're living in, it's overused in all of us. So let's take a little bit of survey of how you think response agility shows up in your organization or doesn't show up in your organization. And we're going to put the survey on the screen and I can read it to you. This is, we communicate what has changed and why. You strongly, what does one mean? Strongly something and four means strongly, but you could see it. Casey, could you tell us what 1 and 4 mean?
Sure. Number one is communicating what has changed and why. And then number four is
No. What's the, oh, right here. Strongly disagree, disagree, neither agree or disagree, or agree. So communicating what has changed and why, empowering response agility in the workplace, which I've given you the definition, cultivating an environment of flow, openly discussing friction and building trust. Just give us a quick little survey. It may change the course of this webinar. Now, Casey, I don't know if they're filling it out. Are you going to let me know when the poll is closed?
yes, ma'am, I can close it. We're still getting some
Yeah,
responses.
let's wait. Let's wait. Let's wait another
Okay.
2 minutes.
Okay.
Well, if you're an independent contractor, then answer for the companies you work with. Because if you're doing learning and development programs, you're working with some of the people inside the organization. So what do you see? Because even with independent contractors, there's friction, there's flow. You guys are achieving results or you're not. So some of them you might not be able to, but even with, I work with independent contractors all the time because I'm developing content and I have to communicate why things haven't changed or have. And when I don't, it does cause friction. So let's close the poll in another minute. And thank you for everybody that's was helping me with seeing the poll. I appreciate your partnership.
And it looks like the responses have stopped, so I can go ahead and end the poll so you can see the results.
Perfect. Thank you.
My pleasure.
One is strongly disagree. So about 33% said they strongly disagree that that the company communicates what's changed. And 33% neither disagree or disagree. And the remainder disagree. So more disagree than agree. But it's funny because the middle people are not agreeing. Empowering response agility in the workplace, same, 33 said no. Wow. 20 said yes. 20%. Consistently achieving results, guys, it's all over the board. It's like 15% strongly disagree, 15% disagree, 15% neither. So it's all split up. Cultivating an environment of flow. The majority of you, 66%, said neither agree. I'm sorry, 45%. It's hard to, oh, now I see. Okay, so 24 and 27 is 50% disagree or strongly disagree. Wow. Openly discuss friction and build trust. Wow, 57% said no. That's that makes me sad. I feel bad. I feel bad. Um, I feel bad about that. So let's talk about how to fix it. I actually have this is the SCULPT process. I'm going to teach you the SCULPT process. I'm going to also show you different elements of how you can integrate the SCULPT process into what you're doing. If that's not enough, we have a whole 2-day certification in response agility where you can learn to be a train the trainer. But I can tell you, I coach people in response agility. Our coaching program is momentum coaching, and response agility is a massive fundamental underlying element. Our level set has response agility woven through it, our compelling future, all of our 21st century leadership training. So we weave this into this is our architecture, and we weave it into every interaction we have with our clients. Super important to get that's why they can do it in 90 seconds, because they're getting it from all directions. So what is SCULPT? We stop. I want you to all stop what you're doing right now. Put your pens down, take your hands off of your keyboard, stop looking at your other monitor, stop looking at your phone, get off of social media, and just stop everything and take a couple deep breaths. When I say deep, I mean 6 counts in. Hold it for 6 counts. Exhale for 6 counts. And hold it for 6 counts. That's box breathing. Try to do another set. The US Navy SEALs train their SEALs to box breathe so that they can calm down their sympathetic nervous system and tune in to their highest level of executive brain. So you're stopping right now, you're stopping thinking. If your brain is racing and you're a firefly, count your breaths. Focus on your breaths. Any brain, even an ADHD brain, can focus on counting breaths for 6, 6, 6, 6. Now connect. Tune in and connect with your highest and best self. You know that you on a Saturday morning when you're walking on the beach or playing with your kids or hugging one of your family members. That you when you're on a walk and you just connect to the you that you're the most proud of, the most in love with, your big self. Connect now. Notice what he or she or they are like. Notice what you admire about them. Let your mouth, your lips express what you admire about them in a smile or a word. Now, tune in. What's going on inside the body in this moment? Now, because you're connected with your highest and best self, you might feel this sense of ease or joy. Or you might be the kind of person that says, why is she doing this? We're supposed to be learning. Why are we going through a visualization? And you might be anxious about that, or you might have some friction about that. Notice where in your body you feel sensations. Try to describe that sensation to yourself. Don't say rough, say feels hard, edgy, sharp, thick. Give it a weight. Give it a density and a shape. And now give it a color so you can feel whatever's going on inside of your body. You're training your neural pathways to look in, to tune in to your own feelings, because the body keeps the score. That's another book. The body will tell you what's going on. Then once you tune in on the inside and you understand, you tune in on the outside, what's going on in your external environment. I'm on a webinar right now. Casey May is hosting. This lady named Maji with glasses is talking. She has a raspy voice. Whatever it is, just tune in to what's going on outside of you. Maybe you've got some challenges at work and they're talking about layoffs. Tune in that that's bothering you. But this is outside, external, situational awareness. Now listen. Listen to that highest self. What does the highest self want you to know? What do you need to know about what's going on with you? What do you need to be aware of? Self-awareness. Very important. Number one element to transformation and to ResponseAgility. Now this says pause. This is a typo. I have to tell Bridget to change it. I don't know how to use Canva. That's one of my breakdowns. If anybody on the call is an independent contractor, wants to help me with Canva, let me know. This is, you are pausing, but you already did. Now you're processing. What is going on? What do I need to know? What might I need to do about what's going on inside me and outside me and in the environment? And then and only then you take action. Because what ResponseAgility is not is having an impulse and opening your mouth. It is not having an impulse and taking action. It's slowing the roll, allowing yourself to get into homeostasis. If you ask ChatGPT, why would I want my body to be in homeostasis? It's really good stuff. Means you're calm, means you have access to your full brain, means your heart and your internal organs are in a state of ease, and you want to live that way, trust me. So these are the 6 steps when you get really good at stopping, when you get really good at connecting, when you get really good at understanding internal and external, situational analysis and self-analysis, when you get really good at listening to your highest and best self and your intuition and the environment outside of you, then you can process and then take action, then speak. You can do it in 90 seconds, but in the beginning, it might take you a day. You might have to like go home and journal and stuff. Now we're going to talk about what friction is, and we're going to talk about what flow is, and we're going to talk in a whole exercise of how to transition fear and frustration into joy and happiness. So now I got a lot of content to cover because I could just end it right here and do that piece. So we all have subconscious programming from childhood, from parents, thank your parents, from school, depending on the kind of school, depending on the community you grew up in, depending on if you were part of systemic racism or part of a bigotry family, all that is subconscious programming. Also, how we feel about ourselves, how we eat, subconscious programming, our thoughts, our reactions, all of it, all of it, all of it. How we relate to the outside world, subconscious programming. For me, at 19 years old, I became a mother, was not too happy about that. But it wasn't the kid that I wasn't happy about. It was the marriage that I needed to break out of. I got pregnant, told my mom I didn't want to get married. She said, the shame of it all. How could you be a single mother? What will people say? And remember, from a little girl, I needed approval. So what did I do? I shut up and I walked down the aisle all the time on the inside saying, hello, darkness, my old friend. I knew I shouldn't have married that guy. He had 22 jobs in 1 year and he wasn't supporting us. And I was mad at hell and I wasn't going to take it anymore. Now, remember the little girl with the dirty fingernails? Tough. This is when I made the choice. I am successful. That year, with no college degree in 1983, I made $64,000 in straight commission and I started the job in June. I was a force to be reckoned with. By the time I was 25 in 1987, I was making $200K a year. I was successful. I had made it to my highest level of effectiveness with that persona. I wasn't just angry. I was happy with that little boy. I loved him. Joy. But I went from friction to flow. This was me at work. This was me at home. This was me at work. This was me at home. I know some of you know what I'm talking about. So our programming, when it's hot, man. Straight commission. I was one of the best. I was placing 10 people a month and filling 10 job orders a month. If any of you've been in recruiting, that's 20 transactions a month. That's 20 people impacted. And I was damn good at it. But it caused me to yell at my 2-year-old son when he needed me to stop the car to go potty because I was afraid I was going to be late for work. And if I was late for work, they would take me off a rotation, which meant I wasn't going to get candidates, which meant I couldn't make commission, which meant I couldn't feed my family. You know where I'm going. Trigger, boom. Now I'm scolding the kid for not being able to hold it. Now, give me a break. I was 21 years old when he was going through potty training. I was young and dumb. I would never do that to one of my grandkids now. I would say, take me off rotation. I quit this stupid job because I'm a grown up now, but I wasn't back then. And I didn't know any of this stuff about ResponseAgility until I was 36 years old. When I started my own company, I was the #1 producer. Go figure. I was tough as nails. I also needed approval. So I hired all these people and I gave them all this free training, but I never held them accountable. Then I got agitated with them and eventually they had to go because they weren't doing their job. But before they had to go, I was not nice to them. I was a bully to them because of my programming. I felt they were attacking my ability to support my kid. This is how insidious our little ego is. When we're hot, we're hot. When we're not, we're not. That's friction. When people weren't producing at work and I was spending all that money and 9/11 happened and I had a $14,000 lease, friction, not at my highest moment. I was operating in fear. COVID happened. I lost $700,000 in one day. Cancel, 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 cancel. Now I'm 50 some years old. I call my coach. I say, I'm feeling friction. I'm laying in bed at night and I see the Grim Reaper. I wake up in the morning and the ground is moving beneath me. Help me get to flow because I've experienced the good life of flow and I don't want to stay in friction, but I can recognize it and I can put words to it. When I was a young woman before 36 years old, I couldn't put words to it. I was just agitated, aggravated. Things weren't going my way. People were in my way of being able to support my kids. The daycare was in the way of not helping me potty train. My son was in the way when he had to go poo poo on the way to daycare. Craziness. So let's look at, I have to stop share and then I have to start share. This is a movie that's out right now. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. It talks about how anxiety as a go-to can impact not only the body, but the brain.
Sadness! Joy! Help! Come on, we can do this! It's not working! It's anxiety!
When you're in a state of anxiety, you cannot feel, how do I get out of here? You cannot feel what you're feeling. You can't feel sadness. That's why the wonderful writers of this program put joy and sadness together, because they're opposite sides, but you can't feel either. When you're in a state of anxiety, you're worried, you're concerned, you're on hypervigilance mode. So here's what it means to be in a state of friction. You're aggravated, agitated, annoyed. Nobody's doing what you want them to do. They're not getting back to you. They're not behaving the way they need to. They're not learning, those fools. They're not learning. But it's someone else's fault. That's frustration. With frustration, there's blame elsewhere because you feel out of control. Fear. Fear, you are protecting yourself against almost certain disappointment or loss. So you're in self-protection, you're in hibernation mode, you're pushing away what you don't like and protecting yourself from feeling and from experiencing. In hopelessness, you've just given up, man. You're in despair. Frustration, you can only be effective if you're there for a long period of time, 25% of the time. A little bit of friction's okay because it ignites the fire. But when we live, when our mood is in a state of friction, it becomes who we are. It becomes the culture. When we're in a state of fear and it lasts too long, we can only be effective 10% of the time. We have no access to our critical thinker. When we're in hopelessness, 5% of the time. Friction, we often describe it as knives in our stomach. Rocks, big rocks, people describe it as. Some people describe it as a hole going through their body, balls of knots. One woman described it as a can opener cutting open her stomach. So when you get really good at this and you give it metaphor, people can tune in, even those people in the left hemisphere. When you say, what's the weight? What's the density? That they can get that. Some people are colors, so they're like, oh, it's red. But friction, it feels a certain way in the body. Some people get, they say a gray, big rubber block in their forehead, but it constrains us. It constrains our thoughts, constrains our feelings. And by the way, when you are in a state of friction, when stress is in your body is releasing stress hormones to insulate your internal organs, which causes inflammation. It's why in these companies that have all the friction, they have so much high medical expenses. So how do we manage the gap? How do we get the hell out of friction and into flow? We start to understand we can't control the world outside of us, but we can master what lives inside of us. We can tune in and do our homework on what does it mean to be in a state of flow? What does it mean to be somebody who has agency over their own emotions, their own thoughts, their own feelings? What does it mean to have autonomy, that I don't need anyone to help me get above the line? 90% of the time I can do it myself. And when I really need help, I call a coach. What does it mean to have authority for making the right call for what to do next from my highest and best self? It's about living in a state of power and freedom. So you have to understand what flow is. Flow is no sand in the gears. You're moving. This is me in a state of flow, doing what I love doing best, teaching. I mean, my hair sucks. It's wet out. I don't care what I look like. I'm just happy. And the majority of the people in this picture are happy, joyful. They've done their work. That's my state. a flow. What's yours? Knowing it, knowing the kind of work you would be doing, knowing what brings you into a state of courage, engagement, innovation, and synchronicity. When you're in a state of courage, you believe, just imagine it in your body right now. You're in this state of courage. You feel like you can do something. You can make a difference. You can accomplish that goal. You can earn that vacation, that promotion, but you believe. And that expansive energy, serotonin, dopamine, they're expanding in your body, oxytocin, endorphins. You feel engaged. When you're in a state of engagement, 79% of the time you're effective. In courage, 65% of the time. In innovation, when you're in this place of no ego, just creation of what's new, spitballing ideas with no judgment, when you're in this space of non-duality, effective 89% of the time. Every company wants people to be in innovation. How? You got to teach them how to move from friction to flow, and in sync 100% of the time. So let's look at what is flow. I got my sound ready.
What is this place?
You know how when you humans are really into something and it feels like you're in another place? Feels like you're in the zone, right?
Yeah?
Well, this is the zone. It's the space between the physical and spiritual.
Wait a minute. I was here today doing my audition. This must be where musicians come when they get into a flow.
Not just musicians. Watch this.
What?
So flow state is well studied. The Flow Research Collective, well studied. You can do research on it yourself. You can ask ChatGPT, what would it mean for me to be in a state of flow? But right now, as we're ending, I want you to close your eyes and I want you to imagine yourself in a state of flow. Back to your highest and best self. Tune in. What is this person like? Shape, color. Where in your body do you hold that? Great. If your eyes are closed, open them. Now we're going to do a quick process for you to recognize when you're in a state of friction. Close your eyes and imagine the last time something went really crappy at work. You did not feel at your best. Maybe your go-to in a state of fear is anger. Maybe you got agitated. Maybe your go-to in a state of friction is fight. That's the anger part. Maybe it's flight. You want to just fly away. Maybe it's freeze. You turn into the deer in the headlights. Or maybe you just want to faint and fall asleep. But notice in your body where you go, because I'm going to give you 4 different ways to shift. And I recommend we practice all of them. So imagine that thing that's not going well at the job. You're either wanting to fight, flight, freeze, or faint. Notice in your body where you feel that. Now multiply that feeling by 10%. If you feel angry, give yourself 10% more anger. Nobody can see you. I can't see you on the camera. If you go to flight, just metastasize. Give that 10% more, that need to flee, get out, run away. Feel however you feel in your body that has you want to run away from it. Now, if you freeze, I want you to feel that frozenness inside your body, that inability to move, that paralyzedness. Feel it in your body. And if you're not one of those people who feels that, then stay with your feeling. And every time I give it 10% more, make it 10% more. If you're a person who gets tired, give yourself 10% more exhaustion. Make yourself more tired. Now hold that feeling of dis-ease. And one by one, I'm going to show you a way to dissipate it. Take your arms out all the way to the side. And now take all that negative energy and I want you to melt it like you're a wax candle melting to the floor. Just let it melt. Let it ooze. like chocolate that's coming out of a fountain. Let all that heavy, angry energy ooze. Good. Now just wiggle a little bit to get yourself back. Now, if you're a person who goes to flight, embrace that fear, embrace that anxiety, feel it in your body. Feel yourself want to run away, and then get in the squat position. Put your arms like you see on the screen, your hands on just above your knees where your quads. Ground your hands into your quads and ground your gluteus and your feet. Like push your butt back and put your feet into the earth like roots are rooting you to the ground. Then you breathe in that anxiety and you let that to process through your body, and you will feel less like running away. These are all part of the stop process. Now back to you that are full of anxiety and are frozen, you're tight, you feel you're not good enough, whatever is going on, and I want you to wiggle, 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 like your whole body is shaking, shaking, shake everything. Shake it more, shake it more, shake it more, shake it more, and then stop. And you'll feel the energy coming off your body. You loosen the grip that the ego has on you. Last, if you're still in the state of dis-ease, or if you want to try this, breathe in, feel that dis-ease. Take your arms way out, and then wrap them around you and hug your little self, because maybe what you need right now is a hug. Do you know the average person needs 11 of those a day? And most people get less than one. Sometimes giving yourself a hug might mean taking a walk around the block, drinking a cup of tea. But this is about settling your nervous system, going from sympathetic overload, adrenaline, cortisol, norepinephrine, to ease, which is parasympathetics taking over. So the stop process, you need to find a way, whether it's the fear melters or deep breathing, the box breathing. So I've given you 4 or 5 different ways to stop. All of them require breath. Then connecting. We're not going to have time on this webinar to help you develop your highest and best relationship with your highest and best self. But one tip I can give you is create a vision for your life. If it doesn't have to be where you're going. Mine is people are liberated. That's my calling. That could look a million different ways, but I connect to it all the time. Understand what's going on inside you. Tune in. How are you experiencing the current moment? What's going on in and what's going on outside, so you can understand, and then ask yourself some questions. I have a From Friction to Flow ebook. You can download this. It gives you all the questions to ask to create your own vision, and it gives you all the questions to ask to look at what puts you into a state of and how you feel. And it even gives you where you go to on the fear melters. If you go to freeze, oh, you can't see it. So we're going to put it, Casey, we're going to put it in the chat. Mary, if you could put the QR code so people can download the book, that would be great, because we don't have time to go through the whole book. So you listen, you ask yourself questions, you listen to the answer, you process, and then you choose your next best action. And to make a long story short, you're choosing from both sides of your brain, from your prefrontal cortex fully online, because you're available to do that because you stepped over the power and freedom line. So people who've mastered response agility report that they experience more joy at work and home, stronger relationships, more fulfillment in life, better decision making, and a competitive advantage in their work. They're 200% more likely to achieve their goals, and they increase problem-solving ability by 430% because they're in a state of flow and learning. For all of you people in learning and development, they learn 2 to 3 times faster, and they remember what they learned. Teams have an improvement of 15 to 30% of the bottom line, and go-to-market is 180 days faster. How do you sustain flow states? Intentional stretches, monitor your progress, reward yourself, develop routines, take breaks, manage your well-being, cultivate intrinsic motivation in yourself and others, and practice. Thank you so much. Goodbye. We went 2 minutes over. Thank you. And I will stick around if people want Q&A.
This was incredible. I knew it was going to be good, but my goodness. This is one of those presentations that I know I'm not the only one that I will be thinking about this for perhaps the rest of my life, potentially. This is amazing. Thank you so much, Maji. We will be sure to make sure that From Friction to Flow ebook is in the email we send along with the recording of this presentation. So everyone will get an opportunity to look at that next week when we send that email out.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much. We can hang on just a bit just to make sure there aren't any pressing questions. We might all be in shock, still processing everything that just happened. So that is a possibility too. But thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your expertise, Maji.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure.